that this is a religious law, okay, then the problem here we have is what happens. So, well, if that's only according to your religion, that you're Catholic, you object to this practice, okay, then I'm not Catholic, okay, then you cannot oblige me, right? So it's saying that this is only a idiosyncrasy of your religion, okay? And so there's a problem there, because then it's not universal. You're not saying that this is wrong for everyone, okay? So that's the kind of like the religious objection, and then, but then the Catholic case is stronger, okay? It's saying that, no, this is wrong for everyone, not because we're Catholic, okay? But so this is not a religious inspiration, no, not a religious idiosyncrasy, but it is based on something deeper found in our human nature, okay? And so we say that this is a natural law which is accessible to all human beings. And so when we say that something is unjust, when we say something is wrong, it's not wrong only for Catholics, but it's wrong for everyone. Okay, and so there is kind of these two approaches. One is, the natural law approach, saying it's wrong for everyone, and so you can have the objection, the conscientious objection. Okay, and on the other hand, you can also say it's wrong according to my religion, which is the Catholic religion, which is in some way, linked to the natural law. But we're saying that this is also a religious objection, okay? And it's because I am a Catholic, so I can object to this. So we can see there is not a tension, but there is a relationship between the two, and how we would play with those two. Because one is more a conscientious objection, okay? And the other one is religious objection, okay? And we can say that why there is a difference, but then also we want to say how we could play with those two terminology. So as we know, this is becoming a very hot topic in many places, especially with the passing of different laws in different countries. In Poland, you have the case. In Canada, we have those who are here Canadians, that the Ontario human rights courts have basically said that doctors cannot object to certain practices, and they have to kind of make referrals, for example. And so also in America now with many different laws, especially for example with the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriages, there will be, more and more this kind of conflicts, basically conflicts between religious. They usually use religious rights, and then the rights of basically of the law, right? The rights or human rights, sometimes we use that. So that's kind of like the tension that's going to be happening all over the map, wherever you are. Okay? So we see this happening, and so this will give you hopefully a general perspective. Here we have the scene in front of us, the Vatican, and here on the one hand there is eternal law. According to St. Thomas, eternal law is basically the mind of God, the laws that governs everything. It's not just natural law, but it's everything. Physical law, law of nature, law of the universe, physically we talk about all the constants, but that is basically the mind of God who puts everything in order. Okay, everything is according to some kind of rules and norms, the constancy and so on, and that basically is eternal law. Okay, but part of that, you have natural law, which only applies to human beings as to how we, in our rationality, can access, to the laws of nature, especially about our behavior. Okay, and then we have divine law, which are necessary because sometimes our intellect is inadequate. Okay, somehow our intellect cannot penetrate everything. So divine laws are usually laws that is revealed to us so that we can have certain knowledge that our reason may not be able to know, for example, about God, about the nature of God, about revelation about Jesus Christ, and so on. So you need divine law, okay, which allows us a certain greater knowledge and access, okay, but it also is related to natural law. Whatever is in natural law could also be promulgated in a divine way. For example, the Ten Commandments, right? And then we have, like Monsignor was saying, human laws as well. No? Human laws are promulgated by human beings, and they are usually international or regional, and they are related to kind of practices that we have. And to make us, we will go through the different types of laws and see how they relate to each other. But first of all, natural law. Okay, first of all, it's very important to know that natural laws are not physical law, like physics, okay, laws of nature. Because sometimes people have the confusion about natural law, understanding this is basically the laws of nature. That's not it. Natural law really is something that is within us and based on our common human nature. Okay, it's something that is discovered in our human reason that we all can somehow have a shared. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you are Chinese or African or European, you can always somehow discover this within yourself, okay, and say that this is right, this is wrong, this is according to our human nature, okay, and this is very important. It's something that is being lost today. Sometimes because some people, especially we heard today, some people have a kind of saying that, well, actually this is only true for you, but not true for me, and we can all decide on our own based on our conscience. Yesterday we heard Archbishop Fisher talk about that, no? The conscience become kind of like the law and kind of supreme, but that's not it. It's something that is accessible to us all, and we can all agree upon it, and that's how law would work, right? Because if you don't have that common human nature, then you can say like, oh, this law of murder doesn't apply to me because I have a different nature, and really I'm exception to the rule, right? So for me, murder is not wrong because really I'm different, okay? It doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. Then, St. Thomas talked about natural law. There are usually different levels. There are certain things that are much more evident. The first precepts, do good and avoid evil. But then when you go down to different levels, the lower levels, that are more practical, then it becomes much more fuzzy, okay? And it's less easy for us to discover, but it's still reasonable, okay? It's something that has to be reasonable, okay? And so we can argue it and explain it that way. It's not the same as divine positive laws, especially in some religions, for example, Islam or Judaism. They consider laws in that way, okay, natural law in that way, but that's not the way we understand it, okay? And the importance of conscience that we heard about yesterday, that we have to obey our conscience, because in our conscience is where we discover, okay, the truths about our human nature, okay, and we have to obey that, okay? And it's the law written in our hearts. The divine law, okay, is revealed by God and has to do with our eternal salvation, okay? And in some way, natural law can only guide us so far, but then we need also the aid of God. God has come down to us to show us in a greater, clearer way, okay, what are the right things to do and wrong. So that's why in the Catholic Church we have this gift of the magisterium of the church. Right? The magisterium church is kind of the body that tells us when there is some kind of confusion, okay, what exactly is God's will about this, because it's very important for our salvation, okay? So morality is important because, okay, God would not reveal to us and say that you need to be saved, you need to come to heaven, without telling us what is the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do to avoid, right? So this is why the church has competence in two areas, which is faith and morals. Faith has to do with the dogmas and the teachings about the church, and also morality, okay? And so this is somehow the divine law usually is something that is given to us, and yet sometimes it is not totally, everything is clear in the sense that, like, there's certain things about the nature of God that we don't know, okay, about just the Holy Trinity, for example. So it is only what is necessary for salvation is revealed to us, but not everything about God, we know them all, okay? So there's still certain mysteries, and so certain things that can develop still, okay? God can still reveal to us with greater clarity as, for example, science and technology advances. You can pronounce on different things, for example, embryo adoption. For example, there's one debated issue that is still kind of like unclear whether you can adopt embryos or not, right? So there are many different things like that still within the competence of the church, of the magisterium, to tell us what is the right thing to do and not to do. Okay, and then we have human laws. Human laws have to be reasonable, but they are also conventional, right? So here you have like a crossing, the zebra crossing. You can say, okay, this crossing, when you have this sign, when you walk on it, then the cars have to stop. Okay, this is a convention. Okay, some places you don't have zebra crossing, you have a different kind of signs and different rules. Okay, but it's something that has to be reasonable, has to be for the common good. So it has to be reasonable in the sense that if a law is unreasonable, you will tend to ignore it. Okay. For example, the green light and red light is conventional. Okay. So it's for you to cross a road when it's green and stop when it's red. Okay. What happens if there are no cars coming? I mean, you're out in like boondocks, nobody around. There's a red light in front of you. Okay. So usually for us, we would have the temptation to cross because we see there's no cars, nobody. I mean, it's empty. Because I mean, it's illegal to cross on a red light, but you say it's unreasonable for me to wait for it to turn green, let's say, right? So there is a kind of flexibility there, right? Because the law is made for us for the common good. But in our case, we can also apply certain kind of prudence and judgment, deciding, well, in this case, maybe I can make an exception, right, to the law. So there is a certain thing that is built into the law, because if it is not reasonable, you won't follow it. Okay. Someone has to promulgate it, some authority, and it has to be spelled out, okay, and promulgated. So these are all the characteristics of human laws, okay. And then usually it has to be something that is changing, okay, changes the culture, changes with the needs and of the society, and usually it's political, okay. Politics runs by majority. Okay. Most people have this kind of understanding or find this reasonable and find this is good for the common good, and so they vote those who are into power, and then once you have a majority or even a critical mass, people believing that this is good for the society, it becomes in some way translated into law in some way, okay? So that's why we have political consensus, that's why people want to change the law, and they use lobbying, they use pressure, because they say, okay, we need enough mass so that we can actually change this law and to move it according to this direction which we think is good, right? So laws change all the time, right? And so there's this kind of democratic process by which we can, okay, in some way push the law in one direction or the other. And this is very important later on, because when we talk about laws that are unjust, it's because there are enough people who feel for different reasons that it's not unjust, okay? And so they make it into a law, human law, even though there's a lack of correspondence between natural law and human law, okay? And that's when we run into problems later on. So here we have these different levels: eternal law, natural law, divine law, and human law, okay? And human laws usually is derived from the two sources, natural law and divine law, are both sources of human law, okay? Because human law has to be reasonable and according to reason, so it has to come from nature. And in the past, a lot of laws are also, based on the church or the Bible. In some way, it has that impact because this is revelation, and it somehow has that function, but that is being lost today, okay? With secularization, we have less possibility to trace the human laws back to the divine revelation, okay? But in the past, for example, in Israel, in some countries still, in some Islamic countries, in Israel, for example, the divine law still has certain power to be applied in human laws. So we see that. Now, what happens if the law is unjust? Okay, so here we see that there is a problem there because it contradicts both the natural law and the divine law. Okay, so these laws are unjust because they are in some way against human nature and against human reason. They're unreasonable or against the common good. Okay, and yet they were promulgated in some way by the political structures who are in the authority to promulgate a certain law. Okay, so if there is a lack of correspondence between, the human law and our understanding of what is right and what is just, so we call these laws unrighteous or unjust, depending on which angle we go at. Okay, then we can apply objection to them, either a conscientious objection, okay, saying that this is wrong because it's unreasonable, it's against our human nature. Or we can say that this is against my belief, okay. So usually the two in some way are mixed together because usually we use it in a very vague way when we say that is against my conscience. I am also saying this is also against my religion. Okay, the two things are a lot of times mixed up together. But for clarity's sake, there's a difference between the two. Because we know that some of the divine law can also be, in some way, especially in Catholic teaching, most of the laws we have, are derived from natural law. Okay, and especially, but then there are very, very few things that are only not accessible through reason, okay? There are very few things. For example, murder is wrong always, that's natural law. But even though the church and many religions would say that it is also wrong because God commanded that as murder is wrong, abortion is wrong, okay? Now, we heard from Monsignor earlier on this morning that according to Catholic teaching, unjust laws are no law at all. Because they are unjust, they are unreasonable, so we don't have to obey them. Okay, and so we can exercise, in this case, objection of conscience or objection of religion, religious objection. Here, we can say, on a theoretical level, okay, we use objection of conscience because we are saying that this is wrong by its very nature. Law is unjust because it's unreasonable. So we are appealing to natural law. Okay? So on a theoretical level, that's what we appeal to. But from a practical level, okay, most countries or most states, you have a stronger case if you make by saying that this is a religious objection, okay? Because conscience is kind of elastic. It's very difficult for them to say, okay, everybody can object to conscience, but it's kind of like, whose conscience is it? How could you define it? It's very much more difficult to define, right? So, whereas for us, okay, we know that this is an objection of conscience because it is unjust and is applicable to everyone. Usually, from a practical or pragmatic or a political point of view, it's easier, it's more effective to make the case of religious objection. Okay, this is against my religion. Okay, because it's much more defined. The religion can say that, well, you can go to the Catechism, Catholic Church, and see this is what my religion believes, and this is against my religion. Okay, whereas if you say that this is against my conscience, then say, well, I mean, it's less strong the case you're making. So from a legal point of view, okay, usually most people will appeal to religion, okay, as a case of objection of religion, religious conscience. Here, I won't go into this. I think in the afternoon, Helen Watt is going to talk about cooperation of evil, and somehow how much are we allowed to cooperate with unjust laws. Okay, and here there's Catholic teaching on that, on cooperation of evil, formal and material. I think I won't go into that, but this is a very important distinction. For example, when you are engaged in abortion directly, that's wrong, but if you are working as the cleaning crew, okay, you are kind of not really directly involved, so you are not complicit in this act. So there are different degrees of cooperation and different degrees of heroicity, in the sense of how much am I called to make a statement, say that I disagree with this cooperation, and so there's something there also we can talk about later. Here, and according to church teaching, also there is many practices today that we see are contrary to we would say nature and also Catholic teaching based on natural law, and yet it is a law that is been changing over the last 50 years because of the change in cultural environment of practices of people, so that there are more and more people engaging in these activities that kind of push the law in that direction, okay? And then we as a believing community, what is our reaction? We have to kind of push back in some way and change the law, and this is basically evangelical. They say that, well, sometimes we cannot change it all at once, but we have to resist, okay? Resist in different ways to change the law, to move it in the direction so that it will be in conformity to natural law, okay? And evangelically talk about some kind of compromise is allowed as long as you're moving it in the right direction. I'm not sure someone's talking about this, going to talk about this later. In some way, international laws, there are many international institutions that are that sees conscience, objection of conscience, as a part of human rights, okay, or religious objection. So there are certain leeways or something that we could use to fight against things that are unjust, because they do allow this international scene. And those are things that we have to kind of be knowledgeable about in order to effectively kind of move the laws in the other direction. Also, I mean, even though some of these laws could appear very negative, but then certain appeals have been effective. For example, the Equality Act in the United Kingdom, 2010, is basically about gender equality. But I heard, if I'm not mistaken, that some midwives could use this instrument to say that I would not cooperate in abortion, okay, in the hospital, using this kind of instruments, international instruments, by which they could appeal and win a certain cases against the pressure to conform. Okay, I don't want to belabor that. Advice is, what do you do if you are in a situation where you could find yourself being forced or being pressured to perform or to engage in activities that you consider unreasonable. These are unjust laws. Okay. I would say, once again, what I said, once your conscience is formed and clear that you know that this is unjust and wrong, okay, not only informed by the church, but also by natural law and reason. The way to do it, I think, is better to, once again, I said, it's easier to appeal to religion. Okay, so it's very important that in where you are, that you make the case of religious objection, and the churches have to make very clear statements, because if you don't have something clear to base on, okay, you cannot really appeal to something that this is my religion, we believe this, okay, so, and then you also have to know the laws in your country or in your state as to what are the laws and what are the laws about conscientious objection and religious objection, so that you can actually engage them in a way that is, I mean, this is legal talk. Once again, the lawyers would have a better help, a better advice in that. And then once again, the way to change is, once again, change culture. We need more people, critical mass, because laws is changing based on numbers. Okay? If we have more people understanding why these laws are unjust, then we can somehow pressure it and move the culture in the other direction. You cannot really, I mean, really change the law overnight. Some people think that, well, you can change the law on certain things, on abortion or whatever overnight. It won't happen because you don't have the mass. Even if you change it, people is going to vote it back. No, it's not going to work that way. So you have to work with the people who basically have this conversion, and this is a very difficult, because usually people have the lifestyles and media and everything, they're bought into this. So the work is harder. That's why the evangelical they talk about the culture of life and culture of death. We have to work in a cultural level to change the minds and the ideas of people so that they would actually understand why it is wrong. Okay? And then when you have the critical mass, then culture change and laws change. Okay? And the last part is basically what to do when you find yourself in a situation where you are forced to perform something that is against your convictions. Here, there could be some things you could do without, I mean, you have to be prudent. Okay, sometimes, I mean, there's some examples like some people ask you to, okay, you need to perform, let's say, IUD in the hospital, whatever. They say, okay, you're expected to do it. You can either say, well, I object to that because this is against my conscience, against my religion, or you can say, I feel uncomfortable or I'm incompetent in this. Okay, so you don't have to say right away, say that I object to this, because if you say that I object to this on a religious level or conscientious level, you could get in trouble, right? Or you can say that if I'm incompetent, okay, I don't feel comfortable, then it's quite different. You evaded the whole issue. It's not, I mean, you're being wise, okay? You're being wise by not engaging, but if that's easier for you, I mean, you can get around it somehow. A lot of times, conflict comes when there is kind of like almost like you're trying to make a case, you know, of religious objection when you don't have to. Okay, I think there's also something there. I think my time is up, and
Actually, we've got another couple of minutes.
Okay. So if you have any questions about this, on this, my talk basically is on this, no? So once again, to make a summary, is that basically the two lines of thought, natural law and divine law. Theoretically, we say that something is unjust, a law is unjust because it's against the natural law, against human nature, on the theoretical level. But then, from a practical point of view, it's easier to appeal to religious objection because it's more consistent as a body of believers to do that, and it's easier to make the case, and you can probably get more out of it, more mileage out of it, using religious objection than conscientious objection, even though we believe that it's wrong, not because we are Catholic, but because it's wrong, because it's against human nature. Okay? Good. Yes, Margaret.
Yeah, Father, I'm not sure I agree with you about using religion
Right.
there is such a strong stream of thought that religion must be excluded from
Right.
the public square, whereas I think you can put conscientious objection under
Right.
secular motif, and for that reason, I
Okay.
think you might be able to market it better.
Yeah, it's a question of marketing. I mean,
Yeah.
once again, probably different countries would have different sensibilities. In some countries, the idea I got is more from England. And from what I've read, it was kind of like, I'm speaking to some lawyers, they feel that religious objection in the national court is better, especially in human rights language, seems to be better, but you could be right, I wouldn't object to that, but
I think the difference
Yeah.
is that whether you have got in your culture a fundamental respect for
Mhm.
religion, and if you don't,
Mhm.
then that's a very difficult
Mhm.
place to use.
right. Okay, thanks.
Yes, there's another.
I'd just like to agree with Dr. Somerville there, having been through the British system and for the past 7 years. The religious argument, in my own case, we felt it was weak because the laws that are coming through from Europe, which the British courts are being influenced by, they're saying, yes, you've got a right to religious beliefs, but keep it in your house. So they weigh up different rights. So I would agree that it's
Okay.
not always.
All right, thank you.
Father, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. My question is what is your opinion about whether the Conscientious objection is applicable also to the medical institutions like hospitals? Because according to resolution of the Council of Europe 1763, it may be applicable to the institutions.
Institutions rather than people?
Yes.
You're talking about how conscientious objection could be applied not only to individuals.
Whole institution,
Yeah.
hospitals according to its tradition, its
Right.
motto, for example.
Right. I think it's more difficult in the sense that, like Monsignor was saying, if an institution, is it open to public? If it becomes a public institution, then it's much more difficult. Even a Catholic institution usually have to take on non-Catholic patients and non-Catholic workers. And so it's more difficult, but may not be impossible. Okay, it may not be
It
impossible.
means that the director of such institution, public institution, Catholic cannot be director of it.
It depends. Like for example, I mean, I would say, I can give you the example of America. I mean, that's the only thing I know because Catholics do run a lot of institutions, healthcare institutions, and they use the ethical and religious directives for those hospitals, right? And so those institutions in some way are protected to a certain extent because they say this hospital has this mission and this is what we are. This is our identity. And I know that they can apply that to a certain extent, but it's not fail-safe. Okay, so there are certain things there, but it really depends on country and laws.
Thank you. I just wanted to add weight to some of the other comments. Certainly in Australian culture where I live, conscientious objection carries much more weight than religious objection. We're in the process of transitioning. I'd like you to join with me in thanking Father Joseph for a really excellent presentation and it really clarified a lot of things, so thank you so much. I think at this moment I should pass the microphone to Robert.
Thank you. I lived in a city called St. John's, Newfoundland. It's over 500 years old. It's the oldest city in North America. One of its claims to fame is that Marconi sent the first, or received the first, transatlantic message from Cornwall, the letter S. He had to do that by flying a kite to get up over the curvature of the Earth. And that was a huge breakthrough, as we are well aware. 100 years later, which is not so long ago, his grandson or great-grandson came back to St. John's to reenact the whole thing. And you know what? He couldn't do it. It failed. That's what we got here. We're kind of Marconis here in trying to show that we can use social media, even as doctors, even in groups like this, to get our message out somehow. Because all this flying around of board meetings and Lord only knows what, is costing a fortune when it could be put into all the things we've been talking about, education, service, training. And this is what we have started to use. We have a project in Kenya, West Africa, in East Africa, and we have meetings with the staff over there, depending on reception, by Skype. And we often can't use video, but we can use sound. It's free. It's free. And that saves a heck of a lot of misunderstanding. She's on.
Yes, so you can do it.
Okay.
And then I'll switch it off.
Our colleagues are right. Yeah, it's free. And so we thought that is something. That's what we continue to expand. Then we thought about how can we get our message over using what is now called, I could never get the word right, but I have now, a webinar. And that's free, where you can get people, you say, okay, we're going to be online on Tuesday week at this time, and we're going to be talking about this. If you'd like to join, it's free. So you get on and you give your message. And so we've done 2. And people seem to like it. We didn't have a cast of thousands, but we had people there, and it increased in number. What we're doing here now is Jennifer, our social media person, who is in Halifax in Nova Scotia, she's recorded a 10-minute idea of what we've been talking about just now. And then you will be able to talk to her live over the connection to show that, you know, we can connect. Though it's only 6:30 in the morning, you can connect and get your point over. So what I'm going to do now is to show her movie. Simon's going to bring in his computer, and you'll be able to talk to Jennifer Durway, her name. She's excellent. She's efficient, she's dedicated. You know, she's a bit mixed up actually because she lives in Canada. She's an American. She's married. She has a degree in English. She's married to an Irishman who teaches moral theology at the theology school in Halifax. So it's kind of a scrambled background, which works. Now, if I can get this to work.
Thank you all for coming to attend this recorded session. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be there with this year. I am using
just going to pause for a moment to see if we can improve the audio-visual quality.
I take Ativan 3 times a day.